I'm now reading part 4 of Late Payment, a story in the Green Knight Terraforming Company universe. Curiosity killed the cat. Or was it the rat? I couldn't always remember. The old childhood rhyme slid through my mind as I followed the biometal humanoid. Dang, she had a fine behind. She swished it at me. Even the robots could read my mind. She turned around and slapped me. I'm not a robot. I am a better-built alien. She stumped down the small tunnel between the metallic walls of the space station. I snickered a little. There was a reason I didn't have a girlfriend or a girl robot. The humanoid jerked a little. I liked to needle them too much. The tunnel narrowed, and I started to smell sewer mixed with sharp smells of antiseptic. I pulled a cloth over my mouth so I didn't taste the smell. I couldn't see the particles in the air, but I knew the science. I was grateful that, unlike Donald, the humanoid didn't start a lecture on how the waste was reprocessed and used in our drinking water and food. I didn't want to hear that again. The smell was bad enough that the thought it could be made into food was just enough that I started dry gagging. We reached the small port, and the humanoid did a quick knock code on the door. I couldn't help myself. That's your secret knock? We used to do that one as kids. She gave me a dirty look and stepped through the port as it opened. I followed her. Tommy, one of Miss Frigg's rats, slammed the door and locked it behind me. Damn, I thought I was in the middle of a betrayal, but there I was, staring at one of those rats. Some of the locks had been dimensional locks because I looked at them. They sort of shimmered. For a minute, I thought I was captured by the enemy. Glad you survived, said Timmy, Tommy's rat's brother. There was an opaque cube in front of him, which he was opening with some tools that shimmered and glowed. Once it was open, he pulled out several small earworms. They asked for you, was the only explanation I got as they loaded the earworms onto my chest. Don't squash them, he warned. This is the entire colony, and they'll be weak for 2 to 3 days. You have to explain it to him, the biometal female said. He's not that bright. Damn, the biometal female had probably been talking to Donald. Tommy sighed and nodded his head at Timmy. We're the only species with a transporter, but there's some bugsy. I could see it. The earworms were clinging onto my chest hairs, and they pinched. They won't be able to move for a while. 2 or 3 days? Your job is to keep them safe till we have had some time to snoop. Tommy and Timmy cheered a minute. They looked at the female. They're laughing, stupid, the biometal female said. They got full authorizations to snoop into finances. This is like hitting the lottery. Before I could ask about how they knew about lotteries, the 3 of them had shoved me out the door. So I stood in the stream of waste with earworms on my chest. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I knew better than to trust enemy territory. I hadn't done my normal recon of the station. I had been spending my time on Miss Frigg with the assumption that she would dislike me enough to send me back to customer complaint resolution. So I was surprised when a little voice in my ear said, "Turn right." So I did. I had gotten soft. I was used to having a work order, maps, and an exit strategy. It's hard to have an exit strategy when the client was curled into your chest and not moving. I was used to Ermi, my opinionated translator. I expected that the rest of the colony would be the same, except they probably didn't know who to trust. I could get behind that. I wasn't particularly trustworthy myself, unless you were family or I'd signed a contract. The tunnel stunk of waste byproducts. The particles slowly permeated my nose until I was ready to vomit after every step in the water and goo. I know I would need a sonic shower. Several, I corrected myself. When I finished this, water would have been nice. I promised myself a full shower and a real meal next time I was allowed to visit Earth. My lab animals said that synthetic cow meat was just as good as the real thing. I knew they hadn't had the real thing because when I finished eating my first synthetic steak, I had constipation and a stomachache for days. Donald had laughed at me. Treating barbarians to synthetic food was right there with leaving the barbarians in rooms with hidden faucets. I know that I wasn't impressed. I slogged down the tunnel and saw it curve slightly to the left in the distance. I tried to keep from splashing. I didn't know who the enemy was yet. In the off chance that they might be in the tunnels with me, I tried to be as quiet as possible. I expect Miss Frigg would put the full power of her office, however lonely, into finding out why someone in the higher echelons of the company wanted to terminate the earworms. My job was to keep the colony alive. Turn right, I heard again. Since it was the only directions I had and my suit map wasn't working, I ran my hand lightly on the walls of the tunnel to see if there was an opening or a door to my right. It looked solid and felt solid, but the metal had that warm biofeel that I had felt when the robot had touched me, sort of metallic and biological in the same space. My eyes couldn't see the opening, but my hand felt the gap. It was just wide enough for me to slip in sideways. All the obvious jokes about sliding through an opening and space junk slid through my head. Donald thought I needed full integration into Cosmo's social order, so he fed my brain full of facts and jokes until I couldn't tell the difference between one or the other. My heart thumped hard. Here goes, I thought. I was a rat in the walls. I slid through the small opening, pulled in my stomach so I didn't scrape the earworms off. The opening slid shut behind me. Then a bulb that hadn't been used in years slowly flickered on. I expected to see a thug ready to hit me over the head, but I was in a very small, very empty room with a small table in the corner. There was no other furniture. I checked for hidden buttons or controls, but this was an older part of the space station. There was a stink of oldness to it that I had smelled in cathedrals on Earth. My gut said this small room had been built when the space station was new. I revised my estimate of the age of the space station upwards to 500 years instead of 20. There was a note on the table. Eat this. The note was paper. I hadn't seen paper since I left Earth. Hell yes, I was getting suspicious. I smelled the food that was next to the paper. It was moldy cheese. It took me a moment to remember that earworms were probably hungry. I plucked one off my chest and set it near it. I heard a high squeal, which I assumed meant that the earworms all wanted down. I cut my hands and they jumped into it. Then I lowered them to the table. They were quick like fleas, jumping from dog to dog. It soon became clear to me that the earworms were organized. When they finished eating the cheese, they curled up together. "Thank you," said the voice. "Wait," I asked, "is one of you still in my ear?" There was amusement in the voice when the earworm answered, "No, didn't they tell you?" I guess I looked pretty dumb. Full-grown earworms don't need to sit in your ear, only the juveniles. Plus, we have other abilities. The earworm was now standing tall as an earworm can, since they don't have a backbone. "Here, let me show you." I started to tap my foot, and then the legs started to bounce. Yes, I wasn't controlling my body. I tried to stop my leg. I held my leg down against the floor, but it kept bouncing. "You can stop now," I said. "I get the picture." "You need to know why they wanted to exterminate us," said the earworm. He slumped. I figured it took a lot of energy to move me for such a little guy. There was no chair in the room, so I pushed against the wall and slid down until my butt was on the floor. I had a lot to think about. What a weapon. Earworms who could ride you. If you had control of the earworms, then you would have control over the entire cosmos. I knew folks who would kill without questioning a weapon of that type. But the cosmos crowd were supposedly civilized. I trusted Ermy. I would have to trust these folks, even if it might not be in my best interests. The scary thing is, I could be controlled. My brain whirled through the arguments of why I should kill the earworms. It gave me a headache that began in the middle of my forehead and spread to the back of my head. The lights went out and I closed my eyes to let my head rest. When the lights came back on, my head felt better and I could see the earworms moving on the table. The earworm was organizing who would eat when which seemed to make him the boss. I called him boss in my head. Good name, I heard him. He sounded tired and hadn't bothered to shield his brain from me. While I was sleeping, he had been making sure the others had not overeaten. Starvation and then hunger for an earworm is just as bad as it could be for a human, only faster. The little room didn't have any amenities other than the table and a small block of cheese. I felt along the wall and felt relief when I realized the room was still open. I had a sudden suspicion that this used to be a prison cell. There was a whirring sound, and then another block of food appeared on the table. I picked it up and put it in my pocket. The boss sent me approval. I'm not your dog, you know, I said, to hear my voice. Sometimes when I was around too many telepathic races, it felt like there were too many sounds in my head. I could hear the little earworms murmuring around me. A tiny earworm moved to the desk. It had to be a young one because it was moving faster and with more energy. Hi, he squealed at me. I smiled at his enthusiasm. I can block the noise for you. I could hear a grin in the little one's mind's voice. I looked over at the boss, who gave the mental nod. I picked up the young one and placed him in my ear. The little one did his mumbo-jumbo, and it was quiet in my head. You really need to work on your shields, said the boss. Then it was time to go again. I unbuttoned my shirt, put the rest of the earworms on my chest so they could hang onto the chest hair. Did I mention that it pinched? And then buttoned my shirt up. I took a whiff under my armpits, which was giving off scent trails. I really needed a shower. Let's go, squeaked the little one. So do you trust me? I asked the boss. Yep, the boss was still in my head because I felt a hesitation and then a reluctant yes. I suspected that controlling me tired him out too. It was time to quit sulking. By hell or high water, I needed to get to Miss Frigg's office. She was going to help by God because even with their special abilities, they were clients and they were intelligent members of the cosmos. I bet they even paid their dues. I marched into the tunnel looking for an exit to the main area. Most of the space station's Cosmo crowd didn't even know who I was. For all they knew, I was the sewage manager. I smiled. Yes, some of those sensitive noses weren't going to like the whiff of poop, urine, and ammonia. Soon I found an exit which had been hidden like the cell from last night. I would have to mention these bolt holes to Miss Frigg. Someone could use them. I suspected the rats, Tommy and Timmy, used a lot of them for their extra activities. I opened the exit and peeked into the main area of the station where most of the residents ate, sat, and watched space through a huge monitor. The earworms barely breathed, had their shield up, and weren't even pinching my chest hairs. When the smell hit the residents' noses, some of them shrank away from me and others started projectile vomiting. I ignored them all and marched to the center of them. By morning, I would have a new name, the Stinky Barbarian. But I didn't stop. I didn't even wonder if I was being controlled. A whisper in my head denied it. This was an innocent group of worms, and they had only one weapon. I hoped the folks who were trying to terminate the earworms would get a whiff. Yes, I was angry as I stomped through them. What these idiots didn't know was that the earworms had an ally in Miss Frigg. I had been baiting Miss Frigg for days, and yes, she stayed calm, but I was pretty sure that she was also angry at how the earworms were being treated. She had some weapons at her fingertips that scared the bejesus out of me. Some of those weapons I remembered if I remembered my mythology right, were more advanced than the Cosmo crowd. And if you want a hint of what those abilities are, you should take a look at the Norse mythology. She scared me. My shoes were sticky from the gunk, and I squeaked all the way through the main area and to the hallway leading to the elevator. I hit the button to the call center. Anyone could have followed us because I left muck, smells, and sewage like breadcrumbs. "Come and get me," I said under my breath. No one did, though. I guess the stink was a really good deterrent. I put the idea into the back of my mind for the next troubleshooting job. I opened Miss Frigg's office door and walked in. And this is the end of late payment.